Hey, everybody, it's Eddie and Oz Crypto from Down Under. We are here to, get together, he and I, with you as an audience. And the first time that we have been talking to each other in a couple of years, I think. I don't know the exact date, but Oz is an OG. If you are new to the space, he's been around for a very long time, took a little bit of a break, now coming back on strong. He's got a great channel. He has a very loyal following because he's one of the people who are relied upon for good, truthful, factual research. And he's also very philosophical. We've just spent 1 hour talking before we were supposed to start talking an hour ago. But we were just going to go over some, like, what are we going to discuss in terms of points, right? And he's the type of guy that you can just sit and talk to because he brings this very, I think, analytical, philosophical, and I think a sophisticated level of thinking when it comes to very complicated subjects. So I will stop there, Oz. Thank you so much for coming on my channel, and I really hope that the launch of the relaunch, I should say, because you've been away for how long, and did you do any videos at all in between that time?
So I've just, first of all, good introduction. Thank you. Very, very flattering. Yeah, so I was releasing videos. I guess the last video before I took a large hiatus was about a year ago, and it was just after I'd sort of moved, and it was COVID was kind of in its peak. It was if it was a year ago, it was a 2021 type period. But the big thing for me was in that last sort of 12 months where I was still releasing, I had just become a lot less reliable in the content that I was releasing. Because when I first started, my schedule was a lot like how yours still is now, which is putting out content every day, if not every other day. And there's all this sort of stuff happening, and I had some stuff in my personal life, and I just needed to step back from it, which led to me doing it less often. And the less often I did it, the less motivation I had, and it just kind of trickled downhill. So it's one of those things where I'm definitely very glad to be back, and I'm incredibly psyched to see that you're now over 100K subscribers, which is just insane and very well earned. Because I enjoy talking to you for the same reason. I think it was about a year and a half ago was the last time that we had a conversation, but we've definitely caught up over the last hour of kind of chatting on our different perspectives. So always a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me in the video.
So we came up with some subjects that we both feel that are interesting to talk about, and so let's just kind of hit the first one. Let me just close my eyes, pick, and I landed on the one that's really tough. I don't know if we want to start with that one. Okay, let's start with it. Why are there so few women in the blockchain space? I have my opinion. I shared it with you briefly, but I can go into more detail, and I'm sure you have an opinion. And I really want to hear your opinion because you actually work with in a space that pays attention to that kind of gender difference, right? So I think you're right. Your comments are going to be interesting.
Cheers. Yeah, I think I just love that is the first topic that you picked, because even leading into this, it was one where we kind of went back and forth on it. Is it something we should talk about? Is it something we shouldn't
talk about it?
And it's one of those things where it's super interesting to me because, as you mentioned, working in a coding and development environment, where there is still very much a large separation between male and female, and a lot of attitude difference from especially male coders towards female coders. And it's frankly, I'll get dark to begin with. It's frankly sad because for me, the main reason that I love development of any sort, whether it's developing and building a business, whether it's developing and building software, is there's this very tribal approach where you'll get into a room with 20 other people and you'll pitch your idea, and then someone else will be like, oh yeah, I did that previously and this is the approach that I took, and someone else will go, oh actually that was a great idea as well, but this is another thing that I did, and everyone just sort of starts to collaborate so closely. It's just such a little community once you get in a room with those developers. but it's been an ongoing struggle from a business perspective to make sure that we've got the right developers that are willing to, especially males, willing to work with females. It's one of those things where there is still such a separation between what is, I guess, traditional old world cultural values, or maybe it's ego from individual people, where it doesn't actually matter whether they're male or female. They just don't respect anybody at all. But it's definitely led to us over time having to weed down and look for the right people in a space where honestly it is still very male centric. And whether that comes down to a personal interest from females to be involved, or whether it comes down to something we were discussing earlier, which is like a time and cultural aspect that still exists pretty much across the Western world and I think everywhere. But what's your take on it? What do you want to add?
Well, I really, my voice is going south on me now that we're pushed the live button. There's two things I really disagree with. And sometimes I hear the narrative that women are less risk adverse, and I don't believe that at all. So that I 100% disagree with. And then I also hear people say, well, it's just an unfair world and the opportunities aren't the same, and there's discrimination, and I don't believe that either. 100% don't agree with that. So those two points, if people are going to push that narrative, I immediately turn it off, and because I've given it a lot of thought. And so my opinion on this is probably going to seem maybe a little surprising to some people, because I'm thinking it's much simpler than that. I think that worldwide, we still live in very traditional roles. And so, and especially for those roles with families. And this is a space that requires a tremendous amount of research. So that takes time. And also, too, you learn a lot from your friends, your buddies, your social circle. And if you are a woman and you're in a role of raising a family, particularly, even though men do participate big time in raising kids, taking care of a house, cooking, cleaning, all those things that women have traditionally done for centuries, women, I still think, take the lion's share. And it's not because they're forced to. I think it's because they want to. I think, I think women really like that role of taking care of a house and kids, and they enjoy it.
And I also think I've just obviously a bit of personal experience at the moment is having a very young son. Is there is a literal difference in reaction and the human element of having a very young child. And what I mean by that is I love my son to death, and I would do anything to make sure that he's safe. And I spend a lot of time with him. I play with him. I do all the different stuff a dad does. But the day that my son was born, I cut the cord and did all that type of stuff. And the look on his mother's face, the moment that she saw him, I've never seen anything like it before, and I doubt I would ever see anything like it again unless not the child's involved. There is such a real, raw, emotional and biological connection there that for me personally as a dad, it took me probably the first 3 months to feel connected to my child, if that makes sense. I was doing the work and I was being a part of it, but I wasn't being pulled towards it. Whereas with my wife, it was very much like, it wasn't a responsibility, it was a pleasure. If you know what I mean. It was every little thing, every cry. It was, oh, I get to help somebody. I get to do this. So that's just one individual, but I tend to agree with you from that aspect, especially when it comes to growing up as well, right? And life stages. So my wife's now got a lot of new friends that are, part of mummy groups and that, because there's a very particular life stage around becoming a parent. And for me and my personal experience and my friends, I can tell you that divide does not exist in males versus females. It really doesn't. When it comes to my male friends, some of them have kids, some of them don't. And it hasn't actually changed the dynamic of the relationship. But when your primary focus and your primary care is around this tiny human being, the community you're going to build is going to be people who see their tiny human being in that same way, that they share those life experiences. So because of that biological yearn plus the emotional attachment, versus the logical attachment, at least from my side and a lot of the dads that I know side, it lends to who you need to surround yourself with, or rather the types of people you will naturally surround yourself with, because your concerns are different. What worries you day to day is different.
Yeah, so I don't think it's women aren't interested, and I don't think it's because women are excluded. I think it's women at the end of the day. It's very, very simple. They don't have time to research, to study, to network with their friends, because they're in Japan. They have what's called mama tomodachi, mama's friend, and mama tomodachi groups are very big. Are those mama tomodachi groups financial discussions? Sometimes, sure. Well, I mean, more household budget things, like where's the best deal for the kids' clothes this school year, or where are we going to get the best buy on lettuce because I saw the price of lettuce has tripled, or those kinds of discussions. Finance discussions take place among women all the time, but it's not necessarily talking about DeFi or how they're going to, open a new wallet, and did they have trouble using MetaMask, and that's just, and that all of that learning curve takes time. This blockchain space is very complicated, very complex, requires a lot of time, and it requires support of friends that you can ask questions.
Oh,
If
absolutely. Yeah.
you
And
get stuck,
like with anything that you're passionate about, right? It comes down to wanting to surround yourself with people that can help you to understand these things better, but also have the same types of questions that you have. So naturally, it can come down as simple as that to the individual circumstances. It comes down to, are you more driven by this particular aspect or stage of your life, or are you more driven by that particular aspect or stage of your life? It's just very, very different. It's just, as a male, for me personally, I've changed ages, but I've never grown up, if that makes sense. Like, you can see behind me, I have a bunch of nerd stuff, because that kind of stuff still makes me happy, and I'm in my mid-30s. So that kind of separation and that responsibility does, I think, change between genders to some extent. And I think that one of the things that we were talking about previously is that will change over time, absolutely. But I think it needs to be intrinsic. It needs to be, that if society's concerns shift to be what that is, then that's what the concerns of the majority will be. It's just right now that the average person doesn't, in my opinion, male or female, think about, what is blockchain doing today? What is happening in the DeFi space? What is happening to further our financial systems and all those types of things? Like, a number of people don't even understand the basic concept that, a bank is just a ledger. Like, they're not holding anything. It's a number on a screen, and that's why you can digitally spend it. And it goes up and down based on when you spend and when you receive money and all that type of stuff. But if you don't even care at that level, and society as a whole doesn't even care at that level, why would it go that step further? So I think is also that, just the niche that is, especially cryptocurrency and technologies, is very much, it's set to grow, but it will take time.
yeah. So that's how I feel. Other women may not agree with me on that, but I guess from my perspective, that's how I see it. Because when I look at my friends who do have children, whether they're married or not, but have children, they have a far less time than I do to spend on how I, can keep evolving and learning in this space. Because and I'm really, really lucky that as a content creator, I have a lot of other content creators I can rely on when I don't understand something, or I don't know something, or I want to get their opinion on something. So my group, my social group within this YouTube and Twitter space, I have a lot of people that I can rely on, but it's not the same people that are in the group that I grew up with, who went on to raise families. And so, yeah, I think it's really that simple. It's time. I really do believe it's just a matter of time. So if women had more time, I think there would be more women in this space. Now, the developer side, I think, is a whole nother issue. I think that's totally different. I'm not talking about the women that code. I think that's a whole different animal. But I'm just talking about
Yeah, I completely agree.
I'm just talking about the people who are in this space, who are either starting up businesses or trading or even just learning, contributing some way.
And even just, being a part of the space and a part of the conversation as well, because that's kind of one of the points that I know for me is, less than 3% of my viewer base is female, and
Yeah.
that to me highlights quite a lot around either the content type or what the audience is. And I think that,
Yeah.
I completely agree with you. I think the dev space is
I
different.
can't get over 10% in
Yeah.
in years and years and years. I can't get over 10%. So I don't know. I just don't know. Well, I mean, I do, that's my opinion. But will we see more women come into the space? Yeah, sure. I'm positive on that. NFTs have been one of the huge big breakthroughs for women to come into blockchain. So there's going to be more breakthroughs like NFTs. So I'm absolutely sure it's going to increase, but I think up to the stage that we have grown in, since Bitcoin came into existence, I think that's a lot of it. And that then brings to another question. Let's segue into that question what we talked about. Why are you in this space? Because you and I have been in for quite a bit, and I think what brought me in, I think there's three main drivers of why you're in this space. You're in it either for the ethos, you're in it for the technology, or you're in it to make money, right? Yeah. There might be another one, but those are the main three pillars.
Yeah. Yeah, and they don't need to be mutually exclusive either. It just comes down to which is, I guess, your primary motivator. But I agree with that.
And when I got in, it was the cypherpunk movement with the ethos that brought me in, that attracted me. And I think everybody in that time frame, and I'm not a really early, but 2014, I would say 80% of the people who were in this space were in for that reason. And that's why I really still very much align myself with certain Bitcoin people who still feel strong about the ethos. I think it's still very important. I'm not saying to be tribalistic and only think that that's the only,
Okay, that kind of goes
asset out there. Yeah, but now it's totally flipped. I think probably less than 10% of the people who are in this space are because of what the cypherpunk movement stood for.
I guess the question that I have, and I actually only just thought of it while you were discussing that, is, do you think part of the reason for that is that certain people have exited the space, or do you think that it shifted because so many additional people have entered the space? Is it that there are more people and therefore the percentage is completely shifted, or is it that the only people that are involved have kind of the different approach, the different thought? Do you have an opinion on where that kind of comes in?
I think that staying home and taking people's personal economies out from underneath them forced many people to try to find an alternative of how to make money. And so we saw the last 2 years of people that saw this space as a potential to be able to survive until everything will never be back to where we were before. So I don't
The
want
new normal, as they call it.
I don't want to see that. But I think that a lot of people came into the space because that financially their options were, few and far between. So it brought a lot of people in who wanted to make money. And, people have to survive. So I totally understand. And we'd had a lot of the, money sloshing around. So we saw a nice big bubble. Some people might say, oh, bubbles aren't good, but I personally like them.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same camp as you.
I'm not saying that the printing of money is good. I'm not saying that, but the abundance of liquidity was pretty nice. I liked it. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that kind of makes me wonder another question, just in regards to that sort of that ethos and that the technology and the money aspect of it is obviously a large part of that liquidity that you're talking about is the COVID situation and everything that's happened globally and how that's all sort of tied in. But I think my biggest concern for it personally is something that we were once again talking about prior to this, which is the risk of one bad apple spoiling the bunch. Because as you get more exposure into these marketplaces, as you get more people that are, for lack of a better term, chasing the money, because and there's absolutely no problem with that. I'm sure you, much like myself, don't necessarily have an opinion on any of those particular groups. It's just different motivations, for, different horses for courses, as they say, like different motivations for different people. But I think that as you get that massive influx of people that are chasing the almighty dollar, following soon after or just in front of them are the people that are offering these too good to be true, once in a lifetime opportunity, snake oil type deals. And I think that that's where, as a space, and I'm sure you agree with me on this, is there's just too much risk when it comes to it completely destroying the foundation of a lot of people's understanding of cryptocurrency if they don't have a base level at least before they are getting into that money chasing aspect. Because it's all good and well to look at it as a speculatory level. I do, I'm sure you do as well. But unless you understand what you're looking at, what you're investing in to some extent, my personal opinion is you shouldn't be doing that. And it's instead funding the wrong types of people that then give this entire space a bad name.
Yeah, that's the technology. That's that other pillar. There's not enough. I love the technology side, and I really love what. That's why when I hear people say that this is just gambling, they're wrong. They haven't done their research on the technology, because the technology and what it's capable of doing in terms of reducing friction and the decentralization aspects of it and all of that good stuff is just like mind-blowing. And so I wish people would focus more on the technology. I wish, but they don't. So the bad apples are going to be here, and that kind of segues into the XLS launch that's going to come live. If we're still holding on to that over 80%, which looks like it's going to hold, we're going to see the XLS, the ability to do NFTs on the XRP Ledger go live sometime on September 13th. I forget the UTC time. It's like 10 o'clock p.m. UTC time around is what the projection time is. I think we need to put out a warning out there that I saw floating around Twitter, and I think it's worth repeating, that stay very vigilant, because there are tons of scams that are just waiting for this XLS-20 amendment to go live so that they can reel you in.
Absolutely, couldn't agree more. And especially as you get into those new spaces when it comes to repeating patterns of something you've already done on a previous network, because just because a scam existed from an individual in the Ethereum space, for example, or on that, recreating themselves and approaching it from the same direction on a new chain from people that may not have been exposed to that other chain in the past, there is just too much. It's like snake oil sales. It's just one of those things where I agree with you and disagree with you on the gambling thing, but I'm sure we agree on the fundamental, which is cryptocurrency, much like any investment, is a gamble. I think that investing in anything is a gamble, whether it's, even buying clothing on sale. Is it going to go cheaper next week? Like, it depends on what you consider to be a risk and what you consider to be a reward. But there is definitely a large difference between just gambling, which is what you're saying that it is if you have no idea about it, versus educated gambling based on the facts and the underlying knowledge that comes with it. And I think that movement into the NFT space for XRP is a great thing, because I think one of the key reasons that the Ethereum network is as large as it is, and I'm sure people would completely agree with me, is because its ecosystem is what it is. The number of tokens, the ERC-20 tokens that exist in that network, the different projects that are built off that network that then may have their own mainnet or they may stay within the Ethereum environment. Having that all in one place in that single approach is what has helped grow that network so exponentially. And I think the XRP Ledger has the same opportunity, but it's starting at a point where that's already happened in a different chain. So A, people are going to be more savvy, but B, that savvy goes both sides. That's the good actors and the bad actors. So it's definitely important to be mindful of scams.
Good point. Yeah. The ones that have tried their scam on another protocol are now smarter and can be more savvy on this new, XRPL. But I just think that, yeah, I'm really happy to see, I think we're going to see some amazing projects because of it. And it's going to be wonderful for the ecosystem for XRP and for the people who are in the space. And again, for blockchain adoption and for bringing more women into the space. I think we're going to see that is a real positive that comes out of that. So let's segue into, since we have, what, 1.5 million active wallets in the XRP community, this is a very much what they call a, blue ocean for projects to showcase themselves in, because they all want to be in front of an audience that is pretty tight, yeah. And we've seen some people take advantage of that in the space, where they've launched their projects first, using either a bridge to XRPL, or they are building on the XRP Ledger because they know that it has this built-in audience, or they do some sort of integration, knowing that it's going to get, they're going to be featured, because we do, as a community, we really do a good job at highlighting what's going on with new projects that are using the digital asset XRP or the ledger. So, we talked it briefly before we started, and I talked about how the XRP community is like sitting at we call kaiten sushi in Japan. You called it, what'd you call it in Australia?
Sushi train.
A sushi train. That's cute.
It's very Australian, very, very Australian.
I think in the US they call it a belt sushi, because it's conveyor belt. Yeah, like a belt. But there's a good side and there's bad side to being part of the XRP community. The good side is you can kind of sit there and just watch all the sushi go by you, and you just then choose one that looks yummy to you, as they all are parading past you. So as a community, we are kind of lucky that way. We get a lot of people just parading, hey, look at me, which is really fantastic, because it gives us so much opportunity to make a participation, a decision to invest, whatever, just to be a part of all of this incredible innovation. But the bad side is, of course, and maybe this isn't bad, this is my question to you. Do you feel sometimes like you're being taken advantage of? In other words, you get somebody who showcases their product in front of you, but they really don't give a shit about you as a person being part of the XRP community. In fact, probably in their private talks, they're like, they're an Ethereum max or a BTC max, or they're dissing everybody in the space, but they're pretending, hey, I'm one of you, I'm one of the XRP community. Do you think, am I overthinking this, or do you care?
No,
does it matter, or is it okay? That's my question.
I think, like, to me personally, it does matter for a couple of reasons. So the big thing is, in this space, in the YouTube creator space, whether it's any specific token, like obviously your channel and my channel are both very focused towards XRP. There's also a lot of news on different side chains and how those things all relate to the space as a whole. But I think one of the big things that happens in the creator community is, if someone walks up to them with a big bag of money and says, here's a big bag of money, talk about my project because I'm now one of you. That's what this bag of money is for. And I personally don't have any problem with people promoting products by any stretch of the imagination. But I do personally, and professionally from a workplace perspective, do have a problem with people promoting something that they don't believe in. And I think that when you get into a space like the XRP community, where everyone is so open and listening, and as you said, 1.5 million wallets, you've got such a large audience, it's active always going to be tempting. Yeah, active wallet, sorry.
Yeah, but that's an important part. You know, it's not just, it's just not a wallet number, it's active wallets.
Yeah, so actively participating within this network and giving salespeople a reason to come into it. So I think for me personally, I think it's a good opportunity for good actors, but I think it's also a good opportunity for bad actors. So I think it always really comes down to, I think there's responsibility to people like yourself and myself. And that's why I said before this video started, that's why I respect the fact that you've gotten as far as you have within YouTube. And I do believe you'll continue to grow, because it's about presenting the facts and trying to be as whole, like whole big picture as possible, and looking at what these certain particular things mean. Whereas if you're just focusing on that one little aspect, or that one little chasing, and just presenting to try and sell something into a marketplace and to try and further one particular agenda, I think it's dangerous to both the operator, as in the individual that's being sold to, but also the person selling it. Because if you don't understand what you're selling, I know for me personally, if I was going to be approached by one of these companies and have the same sort of thing, in fact, I have been, I'm sure you have been as well, approached by these companies that are sort of like, let's talk about this because you've got the XRP community. They're a great community that's going to want to hear about our product. And then you sort of have a look at it and go, no, because if I was to go and promote this product, which I don't believe in because of X, Y, or Z reason, or I think it's a bit chunky, and someone loses something because of me, I'm going to feel personally responsible for that. And I think a lot of the XRP community is very much like that. I know that you certainly are as a person. So what's your take on it? What do you think that the key separation is?
I have mixed feelings, because I feel that if you're in the community, you really have to genuinely love the XRP Ledger and what it can do for its technology. You know, what David, Jed, and David Arthur built. Those three guys really built a really amazing product, you know, solid. And so and now that we see this new amendment coming, and then we're going to have the smart contracts coming, and it just gets more and more exciting, and the value of the ledger and what it can do just increases its value proposition. And so I love it even more, you know, than I did when I first fell in love with it. And because XRP is part of the, you know, native digital asset that secures the network, of course, I'm very much want to see its success, you know. So, but I agree with everybody. I know this term is overused, that all boats rise with the tide. I want to see everybody succeed, and that's why we're also going to talk about what happens if Ethereum does a hard fork, you know, or what happens if Ethereum fails when they do go from proof of work to proof of stake. That's really bad. It doesn't matter if you hold ETH or not. You have to really wish for the success of everybody in this space. That's why we don't want to see Michael Saylor in the position he's in, even though you may not agree that he was telling people to sell their house to buy Bitcoin, you know, but now he's in tax trouble, you know, and is that going to force him to sell? And that's a concern of mine, you know, not having any opinion on it. Has nothing to do with Saylor as an individual. It has everything to do with how it's going to affect the whole entire ecosystem, right? So,
absolutely.
I know I'm talking like off in tangents here, but I'm going to circle on back to, I wish and I would hope, but it's not going to happen, that everybody who does bridge or integrate or build on the XRP Ledger has that kind of ethos of really loving the technology. And unfortunately, just not everybody cares.
Yeah, of course.
I've heard it. There's projects out there that say, well, the reason why we did it is because we wanted to be in front of that, you know, audience. And so it's unfortunate. It's sad for me, but that's just because, yeah, I want to see everybody love the technology.
Oh, completely agree. But I also think, as you pointed out previously, it's that two sides of the same coin, right? Is that it will lead to so many great projects being in front, as you gave the sushi training example. It will lead to so many great projects that are going to give so much initial exposure to entirely new concepts that we haven't even thought of yet. Because blockchain as a whole, all blockchain is as you know, it's a ledger, and ledgers have been used since the beginning of financial system. A ledger is just a way of tracking what's coming in, what's going out, all that type of stuff.
Tracking wars, the balances within wars in the Medici time. That was keeping track of who was spending what and to fund those wars. So yeah, there's not a lot changed.
Exactly, but the massive thing that then came out of that, because you have that Bitcoin being obviously the first white paper that's talking about decentralizing money and giving control back to individuals, no matter what I guess your opinion is on that ethos.
I love it.
Yeah, I personally love it as well. But what's grown out of that to me is, like, from what that vision was in that white paper to where we are today is already hugely different in a good way, as in smart contracts.
Oh yeah, okay, I see that point.
Yeah, sorry, I've made for use cases as opposed to for change in ethos. I think that the entire concept and the approach that Bitcoin has as a whole to give an even playing field.
Yep.
Whether you're a multi-billionaire or somebody who barely has a dollar in their pocket, or you're completely unbanked, it doesn't matter who you are. The system doesn't care. The system serves everybody equally. And I think that as more and more technology gets built out on top of that, and what that can mean for everybody is just, I don't think we've even started to scratch the surface of what the possibilities are. Because as I said before, smart contracts were kind of put in that environment. No one really thought of what a smart contract was. Like, yeah, we're only, less than 10 years sort of into a bit over 10 years into that journey of where this is going to end up. And I think for me, that's the most exciting part, is that these little iterations and these movements into these different new places is what gives exposure to those great projects.
Yeah, I had Quincy on the channel, and he said something that was pretty profound. He said that blockchain or creating a decentralized app, the DApp, can be done by somebody who has $4 in their wallet in a very obscure part of the world that's very underserved, and somebody who has just applies their brain and their skill could scale to 1 billion people in a month. Where can somebody who's 15 years old with $4 in their wallet build something that scales to 1 billion people in a month? That really is, that's the kind of world change that we are witnessing.
Absolutely. And I think it's just like that comparison's made very often. And I think it's such an apt one, is it's the new internet, in that, before the internet got to smartphones and that sort of thing, the internet was a thing. People used it for email, they used it for business. And then we got to that point of everyone carrying a smart device in their pocket at all times. Ubiquity of internet and lifestyle became a thing. We're now at a point where you're paid and you do your banking online, you do your shopping online, you do your meetings and your work entirely online. You're not just saving something to a cloud, you're literally doing everything. You're having meetings, all that type of stuff. And I think that the internet already really democratized content creation around things like music. Previously it was like, if you didn't have a record label, there was no chance people were going to hear you. Then SoundCloud came along, and then it was, if you didn't have a particular, I guess, agent pick you up as an actor, no one was ever going to see your stuff. YouTube allows people to sort of have their voice and create something. Then Netflix and all those services. So I think the natural evolution into what blockchain can offer to further support that growth is, to me, that's the ethos that I believe in, is that the internet doesn't care who you are. The blockchain doesn't care who you are. All that matters is what you can add or what you can get from it. Like, it is as simple as that. And I think that that's where the danger of the internet has come from, is obviously as more companies and organizations control different aspects of it, that you can pick winners and losers. Whereas blockchain and its entire concept and purpose is no one controls it,
right,
and everyone controls it. And I think that that's why this technology excites me so much across any of these networks, because that underlying concept to me remains the same.
Yeah. I don't want to see another GAFA occur. I think it's trying to happen, especially with Web3 and with payments. I know it's trying to happen. There's people who are trying to dominate and be, the controlling gatekeeper, if you will, of those verticals that exist in this space. Can we stop that? Probably not. But yeah, but we'll never solve this this topic, but it was fun. Okay, let's move on to something else. So we're going to talk now about what happens if Ethereum does do a hard fork. And I think they're calling it POW ETH for proof of work. I think it's POW ETH. I don't think it's POW ETH, I think is what it's called. But what do you, how's that going to, is it going to have an effect, or is it just like, as some people say, a nothing burger? Doesn't, it's not going to matter.
I love that expression. Sorry, I couldn't hold back. I love that expression, a nothing burger. Yeah, see, first of all, I love the name Powie because it just makes me think of like onomatopoeia in the old like Batman TV show or the Batman comic books or whatever. The pow, whammy, like whack, like all that ridiculous stuff. So first of all, love the name. I think that it'll be a bit of a non-event from an overarching impact perspective, in that the same way that Bitcoin Cash came about as a hard fork of the Bitcoin ledger, numerous others came about as a result of those forks, and it didn't change the initial network in the slightest, and instead just grew into new things like, you know, faster transaction times and additional maintenance of those systems. So I think for Ethereum, I think proof of work needs to go away. I know that that's obviously a very unpopular opinion with especially Bitcoin maxis and a number of different people, but the amount of environmental impact that something like that needs to have is just non-sustainable in the long term. Like, especially if we're moving into, you know, away from fossil fuels into electric cars, everything is finite or finite when it comes to power, right? So I personally think proof of stake is the next iteration. I don't think it's perfect. One of my favorite quotes is actually about democracy, and that is, democracy isn't the perfect system, but it's the best system we've got for now. And I think that that's kind of where we are in this space around proof of stake and consensus, is because it's decentralized democracy, right? So I think that hard fork would create additional opportunity and a different opportunity, but I don't think it would change the underlying capacity of what Ethereum has been bringing to the space. And that's that place for people to build the ERC20 tokens, that place for people to really build out that network and create artwork and create programs. But it's now gotten to such an extent where it's cost prohibitive. The same thing that happened with Bitcoin when it comes to transactioning costs has now happened with Ethereum, where it's like, you know, you can host an app if you've got $1,000. Like it's not free and democratic. And I think that shift to proof of stake could very much help to change that. And especially if you're going to have two separate chains that can have different rules on them. What's your opinion on where it's going to kind of go?
I think it all depends on how many exchanges support it or not. I think that's going to ultimately give it its chance to survive. And the exchanges are all about opportunity. So if they see a demand for trading, they don't care. They're gonna support it. They don't have any ethos for that matter. They just want and that's their business model. So, you know, what is it? Feed the ducks. If the ducks are hungry, feed the ducks. Which means if people want to trade it, then the platforms are there to give the people what they want and
to facilitate.
Yeah. So I think that and if we do find that the exchanges decide to support it, as now we see the Luna Classic, because there was activity in Luna Classic, there's some more exchanges that are supporting it. So I think it really gets down to what kind of support the exchanges give it. And then will it really take away from, you know, the usage? You know, is it going to divide two different camps? Are we going to get into tribalism on there too? Because the tribalism between, well, it's now quieted down a little bit, but man, I went through that 2017 fork of Bitcoin Cash and Bitcoin, and that was a tremendous amount of drama, and it was terrible. It was terrible. It was just terrible.
Completely agree. And like, as you know, like, I think tribalism is one of those things that still exists so much across chains right now. You've got Bitcoin maxis, you've got Ethereum maxis, you've got Litecoin maxis, you've got XRP maxis. You've got, if there is someone that can agree and ascribe to a very closed set of views, it is going to happen. And unfortunately, I think that those are the people that have the most impact on people who are new to the space as well. So I think there's just a real danger in being closed-minded. And I'm not saying people everyone has their right to do whatever they want to do. But for me personally, I think it becomes so dangerous, or you're shutting yourself off to so much when you're unwilling to hear the other side of a story. Or it's the same thing as, weird example. I have two sisters. My older sister is a lot like me. My middle sister is vastly different. She's the type of person that goes on Facebook, reads the title of an article, and that's the news to her. Not even the article. Won't open it up. Won't read through it, and then she'll state something as fact. Whereas both my older sister and myself, we're the types of people who will read an article and then read an article that is from the opposite perspective, and then read a third article, and then read a sociological study, and then form our own opinion on it. So obviously, for me personally, that's the way I approach everything. I'm very analytical, but I think to keep people like yourself in this space creating really meaningful content, there needs to be more of an understanding of that tribalism has its place. Absolutely. It's great to be around like-minded people, but that doesn't mean lashing out or attacking a separate token or somebody because they talked about a specific token, which is something that has existed in cryptocurrency all along, and to me is incredibly nonsense. Like there is no reason and no benefit to doing it. Do you have an opinion on that aspect?
I'm guilty of it a little bit. I try to be, of course, I've got like 36 different digital assets in my portfolio, and I'm very in Bitcoin. I've been really clear. My patrons know this. My biggest holding is Bitcoin, and then it kind of, because I swing trade, it kind of take XRP and quant kind of take, but quant is something that I've gotten very serious about. So what do I think? I'm not a maxi, that's for sure. But I am guilty of sometimes lashing out at a maxi that is part of the Lightning Network, I admit, because I see so many mistruths coming out about Lightning Network. And so I am guilty of that. And Jungle Inc. calls me out on that, by the way. He always is telling me, wow, what's your problem? Just more,
That's such a Jungle Inc. thing to do. But I'm going to be completely honest with you. I don't agree that is part of the problem that I was talking about, in that I'm the same as you, where I'm passionate about the truth or the fact. And if your opinion is that because you don't agree with that project versus your opinion is that because that's the truth about the project, I think it's two very different things, if that makes sense. Like if you're not willing to learn the other side before you make up your mind about it, that to me is where I think the biggest divide happens. But obviously your side and your perspective on it is just as valid, given that you've had to deal with it directly as well. So it's not a one answer thing, I don't think.
Yeah, well, that just kind of takes us to the point, which is really the last topic I think we were going to talk about. Well, we had a couple others, but they might not be something. We've already been going almost an hour. But the FedNow, I think, was the example of people were reading headlines or reading just sentences out of context, and then not reading the entire either not reading the entire speech that David gave, for example, and they were only taking a portion of the top subject where he happened to mention FedNow, but didn't go to the bottom of that article and see that, it was a very clear point that that XRPL is not going to handle all the transactions, and it's an international cross-border solution, not a domestic solution. And yeah, people were just kind of zeroing in on headlines and then feeling like I'm going to take a position, and those people are, it's funny when you try to stick to the truth, instead of being an entertainer, because there's a lot of entertainers in the space, and when you try to just like, wait a minute, wait, but, and then but here is the facts. And then you get accused of being part of the cancel culture. I just don't know what to say to that. And it makes me feel sad, actually. And because I think that that's the reason why I got into the XRP community. If you've heard that story before, I was a person who was trashing decentralization and all. I was just like, I was originally a Bitcoin channel. And so I was like, oh, those Ripple people, and that's a scam coin, that's a banker's coin. I mean, I had all the same terms that are still kind of repeated today. But I had one person who kind of set me straight in the XRP community. And then I did some research and I was like, wow, wow, was I wrong? You know, I was so wrong on this. So I really then learned that, gosh, if I'm going to create content, I really owe it to myself and to the people who listen to try, at least try. Sometimes you make mistakes, but at least try your very best to give the truth, the facts, whether they're inconvenient facts or not. And sometimes they are inconvenient. And sometimes they're facts that people just don't want to hear or admit to, or they think you're fudding or whatever.
And
It's
I
not.
think then the ironic part, I've certainly run into it, I'm sure you've run into it in the past as well, is then you have the TLDRs, the too long didn't reads, about the content that you did release that was about the facts, who saw the title of your facts and then decided what their actual message was that was taking away from it. And then you get that thrown at you in social media and comments or whatever. So I think the FedNow project is a great example. You did a lot of work on it. You put a lot of articles up, and I thank you so much for shouting out my video previously.
You did a great video on that.
It was just, it's one of those things where I think it's so important around facts to kind of understand that when we're talking about it, we're talking about the iteration that is happening right now when it comes to FedNow, which is very public information, and it's very easy to kind of get mixed up in what you were just talking about, which is the fact versus the entertainment versus the convenient truth versus the inconvenient truth. I mean, the convenient truth would be that FedNow is going to be using XRP tomorrow. Everyone in the world is going to be using XRP tomorrow, and it's going to be $50,000 a coin. Whether that's a reality of a situation is not there. But to kind of help form some clarification around what the FedNow system is. In Australia, we already have a system, as I said in that video, called OSCO. There are other countries around the world that have a multitude of them.
For Brazil.
Yeah, where it's a centralization into a single ledger is the best way to look at it, as opposed to every bank keeping their own ledger. They do still keep their own, but then there's a centralized that allows that real-time transmission. And that is the first step towards internationalization of payments.
Right.
So it doesn't mean that that there is any particular currency right now. And you know, as you mentioned previously, Ethereum and XRP and all these different things have kind of been tossed around as to what a cross-border settlement token could be. The reality of it is, where we are from a global financial system right now to where we will need to be in order for bridge assets and settlement currencies to be, you know, a real driver of volume. They're night and day right now. I mean, you've got Ripple as an organization has signed hundreds of banks and financial institutions that are using the XRP ledger to finalize their transactions, but the entire world's banking system isn't ready for it yet. And I think we've still got a long road to go before we're taking the right steps. FedNow is the first step for that domestic. Get it domestic first, centralize it. Then from that central spot, you can go international and all those types of things. But yeah, I think that key misunderstanding is just a dangerous one.
And King Solomon is doing different, I think he's finished with part 3 now, and he's looking at all those individual companies that are being showcased on the fednow.org enter the city website. I think I'm close to the end of that URL correctly, but anyway, there's like 70 to 90 different companies that have showcased their technology to be part of the integration for the expansion and the growth. And so many of those companies are Ripple partners, or they are integrated already with RippleNet. And so when we do see it go from domestic to international, and I don't know, they've not really given an official date. The only official date we have that is like leaning towards that international solution is they're going to incorporate the ISO 20022 in March of 2025. So my guess is that will probably be close to the time that the feds are ready to encounter the complexity to incorporate many, many solutions, because they already said this is going to be a multi-solution going to offer. And I think that RippleNet will be probably one of many. And of course, some are going to be able to plug in XRP in those corridors that have liquidity. And the building of liquidity is getting quite, I think, impressive as of late. So I think that it's a really great thing for XRP in the future, and it's going to be used.
I think that's why a video that you shared on Twitter, I think it was yesterday, or at least I saw it yesterday, was of the coin conference where Brad Garlinghouse talked about the fact that Ripple is to, Ripple and RippleNet is to the financial markets as Amazon was to book sales in 1997. So
it's the first vertical. So it's just payments is just the first vertical for them. And they're now building other verticals out.
Absolutely. And looking at the corporate side and everything like that, and the enterprise side, which is a logical evolution. But the thing that amazes me so much is every country that appears to have had those conversations, because the first step to countries as a whole making federal decisions around how money is going to be handled is they have committees. And every single country that I've looked at, whether it's Australia, whether it's the US, whether it's the UK, one of the participants of that has always been Ripple. So although we're at a point in the game now where none of it's been built out yet, it's still very much all within its process. Ripple has already done so much work around building out the XRP Ledger and RippleNet, specifically on-demand liquidity, and within that sector to connect, over literally hundreds of banks. And now, while everyone else is playing catch up on that aspect, they've got all this other focus that they can do into enterprise, which is looking at things like smart contract or even inventory management through a blockchain technology that could be backed by financials. It could, just in time production, manufacturing, and that type of stuff could be backed entirely by something like the XRP network. It's just amazing to me that we're so far back on the road, yet Ripple as an organization and their usage of this technology is so far ahead of it that it will literally take time to catch up. And in the meantime, they're not resting and continuing to just churn that same part. They're completely changing where they're going. And it's amazing to see firsthand.
Vision. And it's because they've assembled a really amazing team with people that are, close to the team, and those that are in the on the board, and those that are advisors, and those that are collaborating with them. I mean, it's just they've created a really strong link of partners, and they've gone with this collaboration kind of mentality, which has been beneficial. So I love so we got that out of the way. That I think we hit the list. The only other name I have on here is Jim Cramer. That's because but he called out blockchain as just kind of stay away from it. Unfortunately, the people that are saying that it's nothing but gambling just aren't looking at the technology. They're just not. They just haven't looked at the technology. So you kind of feel sorry for them, actually, right? I feel sorry for them.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, you're starting to see these bigger players that are getting into the space, VC firms and investment firms that are actually seeing the technology and seeing the real thing. But as we were talking about previously, all it takes for the single actor, the single individual looking at getting into the space to say, whether it is swing trading or long-term investment holdings and all that type of stuff, it's a once bitten, twice shy. You get scammed once, and every member of your family, every one of your friends that you're willing to open up to is now going to think that all cryptocurrency is a scam because of that one experience, as opposed to that one experience was a scam, but the technology as a whole, as a fundamental, is basically a market in and of it. It's its own class of commodity, or of whatever you want to refer to it as. For me personally, I like think of it as its own, it's a digital asset. It's something that hasn't existed in any of the traditional markets previously, but it can so realistically be traded in the exact same way as a traditional stock or bond.
Yeah, it's there's so many verticals that are going to create some economic opportunities on a scale of like changing countries' GDP. That's the scale that we're on. So it's pretty exciting. And when you have somebody out there making fun of blockchain like Kramer did, I just feel sorry for him. Just, because it's going to be a very bad look with history coming down the road.
Like, it's just such a very strange thing to say as well. Do you,
Oh, you think it's
like,
manipulative? Like he's trying to like suppress the market so that he can get in on something? I don't know. That's kind of conspiracy theory for me. I think he's just plain not doing his research.
oh yeah, no, I completely agree. No, I don't think that I don't think it's a calculated thing. I think it's very much a entertainment value. Get the biggest reaction. Get the articles written. I mean, there's literally
Oh
articles
yeah,
written about you saying
look
this.
at everybody talking about what he said. Yeah.
Yeah, like,
Could have been just a way for him to jumpstart his audience again. I don't know.
exactly. And I mean, like, what I meant is a strange thing to say is that I think that he's smarter than that, as in to actually believe what he's saying. Because saying avoid blockchain as a whole, it's entirely risky, is like saying avoid commodities as a whole because one particular commodity has gone down in value. Do you like, it's just, it doesn't make any sense. It's a very non-statement, but it's a really weird thing to say as I guess, as we're getting to the wrap up of this video, but it almost reminds me of the Andrew Tate thing. I don't know how much you know about the Andrew Tate thing.
I've been just
Um,
watching Leia, Leia Helper, and she's been doing a lot of videos about that subject. And it was a person that I was, quite frankly, I think it's because I'm in Asia, and I'm not really in front of the kind of mainstream American news. I didn't know a lot about him. I'm embarrassed to say, but I just didn't know a lot about the guy.
No, either did I. I mean, I had random stuff because obviously I watch YouTube as a medium, so I had random stuff that would be somebody interviewing him or somebody roasting him, whatever it may be. But in general, I just, for the record, I find his opinions ridiculously stupid, childish, and pathetic as a whole. But there's a couple of things that I think kind of relate to this. The first is he gained so much notoriety and fame, and people even knowing his name because of the things that he was saying, whether he believes them or not. And that's kind of a conversation we'll go backwards and forwards. Is this a persona that he's created to be that public figure? Who knows? I guess only he knows. But if that type of opinion and that type of stance can get you this much fame and notoriety, it's now obviously led to him being deplatformed and losing a number of different things. But I think it's also a dangerous reflection of society that's willing to reward or observe that behavior before it then gets to the point of being cancelled by that cancel culture. It's just a very strange space for us to be in technologically when it comes to free access to media. So yeah, apologies for bringing up Andrew Tate. It's a
No,
weird one. It was
I
just one
know
that I
it's a
thought was a
touchy
bit.
subject, but I just don't know enough about it to even comment. I've just been catching Leia's, she's really gone on some big, huge medias then talking about it. And it's all new to me. So I just don't know. But yeah, he definitely takes a position or that isn't necessarily verbalized very much. So I don't know. I just don't know. I'm definitely not up enough to even comment on the subject. It's
Yeah, no, fair enough. And it's probably one that I'll steer away from because it does often it gets people's goat, I guess. It's the same as talking politics, right? It's like you're always going to be alienating 50% of your of the people that you're talking to, because some people are going to agree, some people are going to disagree. So
it's a good
yeah.
thing about Japan. They don't talk politics. It's a subject that nobody talks about. Everybody has a public face on it, which is neutrality and don't talk about it. And then on the private side, everybody does. Of course, they have a pretty high amount of people who participate through voting. But it's interesting here, though. This is a kind of non-confrontational type society that doesn't like to cause people to feel bad, and so they just don't talk about it. It's not discussed. It's kind of nice. I've got a family where I've got a father who sits on one side and a brother who sits on another side, and yeah, it's kind of tiring sometimes.
In Australia, I mean, we've got compulsory voting, which is a bit of a strange concept when it comes to democracy and freedom of choice, but I won't go down that road.
Compulsory voting.
Compulsory voting.
You have to vote.
You have to vote. You have no choice but to vote in a primarily two-party system.
What happens if you don't cast a vote?
You get fined.
You get fined? What's the
Yeah.
fine? How much?
Depends. So in like, because we've got local and then federal, like local, state, and federal elections. Local and state is about $50, I think. Federal can be up to 200 plus late fees. On top of that, can go up to like $5,000. Yeah.
I had no idea. Wow.
Yeah, the Australian media generally doesn't like it's one of those things where you always hear about our different parties arguing. Like one is saying, oh, they did this, the other one's saying, well, we did that but better. Like it's just that weird back and forth. But our biggest media in this country, the two biggest media companies, are literally owned by clear backers of those two particular things. So it's almost like the Fox News in America thing, but with our political system. So it is it's an interesting one, especially when you then add compulsory. I think we've got to be the only country in the world that has compulsory voting. I can't think of another country.
I did. Has that been around a while?
Yeah.
Wow.
Like as far as I know, since our institution of prime ministers.
So do people talk about making an amendment and changing that? No. They're half.
Well, it's just there's a lot of people who will just donkey vote. So basically, if you just go in and put like, they don't check who you voted for. They just check your name as you go into the booth. So most people will just go and do it, not have an opinion, and just scrap the piece of paper and throw it in the bin. But therefore, it's the opposite. And sorry, I said I wasn't going to talk about politics, but for me, it's the opposite of the point of democracy. Like you're forcing people to have an opinion when they may genuinely feel that they don't have an opinion either way.
Yeah.
So that's not democracy. Like in fact,
might not agree with either side. They have an
exactly.
opinion, but it's like outside of their two choices.
Yeah, because we do have smaller parties, like multiples on the ballot, but it always comes down to which ones of those smaller parties will side with the bigger ones because they can then have a seat in the Senate or House of Representatives as opposed to controlling.
Learn something every day.
It's bizarre.
Well, I hope that we hung on to a majority of the audience a long time, hour and 16 minutes about. So I enjoyed it. So if nobody else did, it's okay. I had fun talking to you.
I had an amazing time. If we've been on this video for an hour and 17, that means we've been talking for over 2 hours, which is just great. I really do look forward to every time we get to chat. So just a massive thank you again to for bringing me on and having a conversation. It's great.
Yeah, I don't do this very often. This isn't really my format, right? It's usually I'm very prepared and kind of okay, 10 to 12 minutes. All right, ready, go. That kind of thing. But it is fun to talk to people who've been in the space a while, like yourself, because I think we are from like the same generation. And so of not age-wise, but of being in the ecosystem, we're part of that same generation. So we, I think, have a lot of the same ideas and perspectives. And Momo's going to come join us now. So
very cute.
Yeah, she's my Tonkinese. She's a good kitty. She has a bed that sits next to my laptop, so sometimes she comes over.
She'll wander across the warm laptop, no doubt. And yeah, I agree with you. I think that generationally, as far as this technology goes, we're very much aligned on. We don't necessarily agree on everything as well as we should, but we both certainly have enough experience from our own personal experiences that we can always collaborate and have these amazing conversations. So I think that there's definitely some value with it, even just for me selfishly. If it's not for yourself or for any particular audience, it's always good to get to talk to you and see the other side, I guess. So
I did have a few people who knew you were coming on and they wanted Jungle to join. So maybe in the future, we'll do that. And also there's lots of other people. We used to do this on the zoo. Did you ever go on to the zoo?
I think I was on the zoo once, maybe twice. But yeah.
That was always really fun for me. That was back in 2019 that the zoo was
would have been thereabouts.
But and then Chip and Jeff used to have sometimes these kinds of group. But it is fun, to take the time out and just kind of, as we say, let your hair down. I used to have long hair when I was young, but I have since cut it all off. All right, Oz, thank you. And I hope that, well, I know I'll be talking to you on the backside through DMs, but it would be nice to have a chit chat conversation again. And I don't know, like around Christmas time, let's just kind of pencil that in.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's do that.
All right, sounds good. Talk to you soon. And as
Thanks
I said,
again.
yeah, sayonara. Bye-bye.